Brian Sutton, one of the most prominent Democratic voices in Southeast Texas, talking with us. Brian, congratulations on the inauguration of Joe Biden as the 46th president of the United States.
Well, I appreciate all that. That's all very nice to have said, and I'd just like to reply and say congratulations to everybody, because I think it's a good thing for all of us, regardless of which side of the aisle you might be on.
But did it strike the unifying chord that most presidents try to hit at the beginning, and does it feel like a good start to a new administration?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. Asking questions is sort of part of my job. And I wish that somebody could tell me what else he could have said or what else he could have done to have improved on it. I thought that it was direct, favorable. And, I think he's going to try and do what he said in his speech. And I don't think you can ask much more.
Very easy to say that he has pressure from the progressive side of the party that's hitting him as well. So is he going to be able to weather that pressure?
I would say, I think that he has enough years in politics, is long enough in tooth. Let's face it, people are concerned about his age. I would say that his age lends him some resistance to that. If he was somebody younger who would be looking for a second term or looking for something later in life in terms of a career, you would have a concern about it.
Very well written speech. The question becomes, is Joe Biden going to be able to stay sincere on those unification points?
I can tell you that without a doubt, he will be sincere and try and unify. Obviously, there are some people who may not be interested, willing, or want to unify.
Among the things said by the 46th president of the United States, our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we are all created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization have long torn us apart. The battle is perennial and victory is never assured, said Joe Biden in the inaugural speech. Nativism. What is wrong with the notion of American exceptionalism? What is wrong with protecting American values first? And will Joe, and in saying so in his inaugural speech, does this portend a signal that Joe Biden is willing to take America in a very different direction than what we have seen in the past, certainly in terms of the Trump administration, with the idea that with the America First notion?
Well, let me say this, and I stand to be corrected. I have not Googled these terms in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But the word nativism does not necessarily, in my mind, exclude America's exceptionalism. America can be and is an exceptional country, but we don't need to be isolationist, nativist, as it were, to the exclusion of our place in the world. And that's my perception of what he was discussing, the idea of complete isolation and America first at all costs and options. Let's face it, a lot of the time, if you want to get ahead in the world, whether you are an individual, a family, a company, or a country, you have to set aside to some degree your own immediate self needs and interests for the better good of both yourself, your country, and your family to get to where you want to be in the long run.
Is the 15 executive orders a bold statement, or is it overreaching at this time?
I would say that it is something of a bold statement. I wouldn't say it was overreaching. To be fair, we've got a fairly long track record here over the last 12 years. And he is sort of stepping back into the shoes and mindset of the administration that he was in. Probably doesn't seem that long ago to him that he left the White House. And so I don't see it as being overreaching. I see it as taking initial steps to say, these are the directions that I want to go on this. And I mean, look, let's face it, there are divisions over, for example, the Keystone Pipeline. I know that in Texas, people tend to hold oil and gas sacrosanct and that they can do no wrong. I have a bit different view of it. I have a more personal property right and personal interest rights and concerns than a corporate business. I have some very good friends who are in fact in oil and gas, and they're actually opposed to the pipeline, mainly because it's bringing what they consider to be crappy tar sand oil that Canada is shelling out and pushing down here and then moving through here. So they're not. I have a very good friend who I live up in Hardin County with, and he would have said, well, that's just because he's got the power and he can do it. And that's what elections are about. Yeah. So with all due respect to my good friend, Mr. Batman, today, Joe's got the power to do those.
Yeah. Yes, he does. That the elections have consequences.
That is also what he says. That's correct.
And finally, just your feeling.
I don't. You know what? I don't mind. I don't mind saying this, and I think it's unfortunate. I literally breathed a sigh of relief. I felt very strongly and very bad about what this country has seen in the last few weeks.
Yeah, you breathed a sigh of relief because there wasn't violence.
That is true, but I also breathed a sigh of relief because Donald Trump was no longer the president, quite honestly. Okay. I have obviously some of the same fears and concerns from the other direction as some of the people today have about Joe Biden going into office. But it is what it is, and the winner is the winner. And let me just say, while you and I are talking here, a lot of people seem to be engaging in a lot of what I call whataboutism. Whataboutism. Well, what about this and what about that? I stood in front of the TV and screamed at people that were rioting during the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, why are you breaking those windows? Why are you beating that person up? Why are you ought to get locked up. They ought to throw away the key. Somebody ought to, they ought to just come out and just start shooting all of y'all. And so there are most Republicans and most people who voted for Trump probably did not think it was a good idea to storm the Capitol. I think that if you lined everybody up, well, let's put it this way. If you lined everybody up and asked them to say it, none of them would say it was a good idea, or they might be getting put in handcuffs and moved on. Yeah. But I genuinely and sincerely believe that. I think it was a misuse and abuse of the power to lead people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why he got impeached and is looking at trouble on it. Well,
did President Trump incite that riot?
Absolutely. I mean, I have no doubt about that. I watched his speech. I watched what happened.
We have to fight harder. That's what the president said in his speech on January 6th.
Well, let me just put it to you this way. At 72 years of age, as Michael Cohen said, he's learned to speak in code. So he's not going to say, go down there and break into the White House and stop the vote. He's not going to say smash windows. He's not going to say bring zip ties. He's not going to say take over the Senate. It's a little bit like when the Godfather says, don't do nothing wrong, but we got to get rid of this guy. So some of the people, all they say they hear is, well, he said, don't do anything wrong.
Yeah. See, the words that incite violence or the potential for violence that I heard were not those of Donald Trump Jr. or not those of Donald Trump, but were those of Rudy Giuliani.
Rudy Giuliani. Let's give him a trial by combat. Yes. No. I that was much more direct and much more obvious. But
very unfortunate.
You also have to consider that when you make demonstrably false statements in order to gin people up into a rancorous mood, which he did. I mean, I think it's well accepted now that he lost the election. The recounts showed it. The lawsuits showed it. Whether you believe it or not, it's demonstrably false. And when you do those things and you gin those people up, and then you don't take the steps that you have available to immediately say, whoa, people, stop. This is not what I ask, and this is not what I want. Then you've incited a riot.
Well, the president did make remarks about being peaceful.
I saw the remarks. They were special people, and he loved them. We each heard different parts of the same conversation, much louder than the other. And I know the parts that you heard, and I know the parts that I heard. And the thing is, just because you say two different things in a topic, in a speech, doesn't mean that you later get to pick and choose which ones get said.
I really was thinking in advance of this interview, AOC and you in a room, if I could hear you two go at it, I could understand the Democratic Party, I think, going forward.
There are a lot of things that she has to say that I don't necessarily agree with, but I understand, where she's coming from. But I don't have to agree with them. I mean, I could say the same thing about Bernie Sanders. I mean, look, if you go all the way back to the contract with America, you probably remember the contract with America.
Sure.
And our good friend Newt Gingrich.
Well,
if you recall, all of a sudden the Republicans woke up one morning and they had the presidency, the Senate, and the House. Mm-hmm. And this contract with America was hanging around out there, and all of a sudden they could pass it and shove it down everybody's throat. And in large part, that is what happened. So you've got a little bit of the same thing going on here. Obama had a couple of years where he was president, had the Senate and the House, and he decided that his political capital would be spent on healthcare. I mean, that was it. That was really where it went. I would have preferred that we would have played the Mitch McConnell game and gotten a bunch of Democratic judges, but he didn't. He spent his political capital on the Affordable Care Act.
Great points. Something I liked the way Leader Schumer made the decision to split up the committee chairmanships as well. That's a very hopeful sign, I thought.
It is. I mean, and again, not to be too catty, but can you imagine if it were the other way around, that Mitch McConnell and the Republicans would have split the chairmanships?
Sure, they would. Just like Trent Lott did back in the day in splitting things.
Have you ever flown into the Trent Lott Airport?
No, I haven't. What happened?
I have flown into the Trent Lott Airport. They have good hamburgers. That's all I'll say.
Always great to talk to you. We appreciate
Kevin.
Brian Sutton, as always, for a view of this historic day. Great to see you, man, and thanks so much.
You too, and thank you very much. And I'd just like to say to all my friends, congratulations, and for everybody who's worried, don't panic yet.
Don't panic. Don't panic. Take care.
You too.